What do you think?
Nice dog, Mark.
You think if Scotland knew that Brexit was coming, you think they would have?
We
Huh?
got duped. We got duped big time, man.
Got duped big time. They pulled a slip move on them.
We have another vote.
See, this is what people in this country, they don't know anything outside their thing. So when you talk to them about the world, they say, oh, the world's going crazy. I'm like, you don't fucking know the world. You fucking in one state and just, you don't even know who's running the state. So it's key for the United States citizens to start understanding what's happening around the world, around the map more than ever. But they've made it harder to have passports now. So they want to detain the citizens from the rest of the planet. That shit is fucked up. And me as a musician, as a culturalist, the same thing with Be Real, Tom Morello, DJ Lloyd, Timmy C, and Brad Wilk. Our music goes to the world. As musicians, we have the utmost obligation, joy, and pleasure to catch up to these words. And the same thing with, Zach De La Rocha, who wrote much of this and performed it. So it's a part of him too. That's what we do it for.
The people of Scotland stand with you, man.
Huh?
The people of Scotland stand with you.
Of course. Hey, what's up, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Edinburgh? Yo, Chuck D, what up?
This is Rudkowski of We Are Change. I just wanted to get your take on the two-party system that we're living under here and the choices it gives people.
Pepsi?
Yep.
A two-party system, Coca, Pepsi. Remember they used to have the deodorant commercials and they were both owned by the same company?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's been a tragedy. Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of people are underrepresented. What do you think is the solution when you have such a tight grip of control on the political system that?
Well, it's not, the political system is a primitive system. It's primitive. It's like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It's like, I'm a big fan of what the Green Party was doing. If Rosa Clemente and Cynthia McKinney was running this year, I would have totally voted for them. Mm-hmm. But there's a math issue because if you actually take away from something, you got the idiocracy of Trump, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. He got pages that sound so similar to 1934 Germany. So I'm like, you just can't go that way. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be so easy for Hillary. So I'm like, what the fuck, man? It's like people are trapped in this two-party system, and you might as well be having a king and a monarchy. What up, bro? Yep.
Some people are confused with Trump because he said Bush knew about 9/11. He wants to audit the Federal Reserve, release the 28 pages. But then the next day, he says he wants to torture and murder people too, without any trial.
That's the signs of a fucking schizophrenic. But I mean, he says those things that that also resonate with people. Like, yeah, the government is fucked up, but he's got so much of a crude dynamic. It's like, dude, yeah, we understand you, we feel you, but you can't do that job. You should become a mayor first. Be like Bloomberg. Start fucking low. And I don't mean by the fucking apprentice.
Chuck,
So,
let me ask you this.
and I'm a musician, so I could curse. But for him to actually try to actually campaign like he's a guy of the streets that running the Huey Long and reverse shit, it's inappropriate.
You know, let's talk about what's been happening in recent days. When you hear with Chuck D and blaming.
Me and Davey D is
That's
just
right.
walking the streets with, oh, look at that bicycle chain.
The blaming of the Black Lives Matter movement on police getting shot and almost the disappearance from the white dude that shot the two police in Michigan. What is that about? And we've seen this narrative before. We've had this conversation over the years.
It's the worst thing that ever could happen. When that happened, Dave, you know what was going through my mind. I know we didn't talk. It's the worst thing that ever could happen after the worst thing that ever could happen. After the worst thing that ever could happen. After the worst thing that ever could happen. That was the problem. The problem was, well, it's many problems. It's like, oh shit, it's like when you have somebody.
They put you all in the
Well,
in the race.
well, you're on your toes because you're speaking for what's right. But it's easy to be on your heels on defense when you're like, oh shit, man. It's like we didn't want this to happen, but it's a side effect that's inevitable. Look, man, we know that there's already been anger in youth and anger in the streets for the last 40, 30 years. So let's say 35 to 40 years since Reagan and Bush and guns and drugs in the community. That anger been there. What they've kind of been not crying on, but kind of like turning the other cheek too. It's like, well, that's over there, and those young kids are shooting each other. But that anger's still there, and they might grow into adults, and cats got locked up for selling weed and shit, and caught a body from a friend who might have caught, turned into an enemy that might have caught them. Nobody was going into the dynamic of how to fix those kids who are now adults and now they're kids.